The mission of the arts and sciences to document, examine, and in many ways recreate the human experience is one of the most cosmically significant endeavors I can think of. It not only creates a record that we were here, but also a record of what it was like, or is like, to be us. Now, our lived experience is incredibly complex and nuanced, but you wouldn't think it based off the language we normally use to talk about our experiences. Things are commonly good or bad, fine or not fine, okay or really not okay, heart eyes or skull and crossbones. Between these two rather dull extremes lies an abundance of facets of experience that often go unsaid and unacknowledged. Now, it's the overarching goal of art, literature, film, and even YouTube to use the medium to convey what it's like to be, and why those juicy morsels of feeling and experience are so immeasurably important. It's from this deep understanding of the importance of the many facets of existence that we get Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. Today we're going to unpack this book, and I'm going to try to convey to you some of the contents and also the significance of what Brene Brown is trying to tell us. This video is not meant to be a replacement of the book, but it should give you an idea of if this book is going to be valuable to you and if it's worth your hard-earned time and your hard-earned money. We're going to do a review and sort of a breakdown of the contents of the book. Then we'll do a review of the actual physical book itself. And finally, you'll hear my thoughts of if it's worth it or not to pick this thing up for yourself. So without any more delay, let's jump into Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. Okay, so from chapter 1 forward, it is incredibly apparent that Atlas of the Heart is a love letter to the human experience. Brown is practically gushing with admiration and curiosity for the intricacies of how cognition, emotion, and behavior all interact with one another to create some of the most profound human experiences like resentment, humiliation, or dread. The book reads kind of like an encyclopedia, but if a really good friend was walking you through an encyclopedia and connecting each topic with other topics using stories and memories that really bring the whole thing to life. The book balances utility and artistry incredibly well, and one never really outshines the other. So in the book, we've got basically an encyclopedic breakdown of different human experiences. And instead of grouping those experiences alphabetically, like we might see in another book like this, or grouped by categorized dysfunction, which you would see in like a psychology textbook, Brown instead categorizes experience by circumstance, which is in itself a more experiential way to relearn these concepts. It's pretty cool. So for example, one category, one grouping of experience is called places we go when we compare. And actually all the categories begin with the phrase places we go when, which is kind of Brown's way of trying to develop a roadmap or an atlas as a perspective that we can view emotion and experience through. And viewing these things as locations makes it easier for us, the reader, to imagine drawing connections between different concepts. Again, balancing artistry with utility to extract the maximum amount of insight from these topics. So within this particular location and circumstances, places we go when we compare, Brown lists comparison, makes sense, admiration, reverence, envy, jealousy, resentment, Schadenfreude, and Freudenfreude. Now, typically we would never see this eclectic grouping of experiences because academically we don't group things by experience. We instead like to categorize based on the easiest identifiable characteristic. So in any other book, you would find comparison grouped with envy and jealousy. Admiration and reverence would go somewhere else. Resentment would be placed in a section about anger. And Schadenfreude and Freudenfreude would be placed in a mixed emotion or other category. This feels like Brown saying, no, you don't learn about the experience of tasting really good Italian food by separating each ingredient and then tasting those on their own. When you taste Italian food, you experience salt and acid and umami. And that umami flavor you're experiencing might be from the meat or it might be from the mushrooms. Now, traditionally, meat and mushrooms would be categorized very differently, but the experience you have of them in the context or location of a pasta sauce, they become almost indistinguishable. Brown is suggesting that we start to think of feelings and emotions like this. For example, she cites a study in this chapter which found that 90% of recalled episodes of envy can be attributed to 3 categories: attraction, competence, and wealth. Now, in this context, attraction could be physical attraction, romantic attraction, or social popularity. So that means this experience we have of feeling envious is quite often sparked by desire. We see something beautiful, we have a desire for it, and that desire can turn into envy. And another facet of envy is that it's also been linked with hostility. So now we have a recipe or a circumstance or a location where attraction and hostility become crossroads. They're related. They become part of the dish of envy. And although this dish of envy might taste similar to the dish of jealousy, they're actually distinctly different in origin. One of them, envy, comes from wanting something that we don't currently have, whereas the other one, jealousy, comes from the fear of losing something that we do have, like a relationship. And resentment, which is typically grouped with anger, if you know your Enneagram, you know this to be true, is actually, it turns out, more closely related to envy. Now, this kind of turns resentment on its head because typically we think of that resentment dish as saying, "You're not working as hard as me, that's really pissing me off." Now, instead, this is suggesting that the real reason for resentment is this experience of, "I'm upset because I see you taking it easy. I wish that I could take it easy like you." Right? We actually have the desire to be like the person or the circumstance we're resentful of. And this brings us back full circle to the relationship between desire and hostility. Whoa, this is crazy. The whole book is full of things like this. And the beautiful thing is it's all backed by research. This isn't Brown just kind of sitting and theorizing things and sharing that with us. It's backed by studies previously done or data that she's collected. And there's about 30 pages of references at the end of this book, which is just awesome. Okay, now I can't rightly do a review and breakdown of this book without talking about the physical book itself. It's beautiful. Let me preface this by saying that I love books. I love buying books. I love turning the pages of books. I love surrounding myself with books. I have a ton of books in here. But I do often find that after I buy a book, that kind of gravitational pull towards it, after you read through it and spend some time with it, that pull kind of eases up a little bit after just a few days. And that's because most of the time, there's not a lot to keep you coming back. Now, Atlas of the Heart is an exception to this because, well, it's just beautiful. I mean, the way everything is laid out, the titles, the drawing, the quotes, the photos, the text, this book is designed to be something that you chew on a little bit every day. You can read it front to back, or you can randomly pick a page and you're certain to find something interesting, insightful, or profound. Now, from my perspective, this is Brown's way of saying that the tools to have insight into your experience should not be tucked away on the bookshelf of some therapist in some closed office. Those tools should be on your coffee table. They should be in your living room. They should be in your kitchen. They should be accessible anywhere, and they should invite you to come in and spend time with them. And that's exactly what you want to do with this thing. You just want to grab it and take it to the couch and chew on all of these morsels of information and insight. I started with the audiobook, which is great, by the way. It's read by Brown and it's really well done. She has all of these kind of like spontaneous moments during the reading where she goes back to reread something or she adds a little bit of flavor that's not in the book. It's great. But when I went to pick up the hard copy for this review, I was so pleased to find that the physical copy is actually really essential. So I highly recommend that you get a physical copy, and not just because of the design, but because the thing is truly an atlas. It's an encyclopedia, and you're gonna want to just reach for it and grab it to look something up when it's at the top of your mind. But actually, this is where I would like to hear from you down in the comments section. Do you think that a book like this would be helpful to your everyday life? We've got a lot of things to do. We have a lot of things to worry about other than relationships and connection. And while I personally think it couldn't be more important, I do value and I want to hear your perspective. So let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Now, is it worth your time? Absolutely. Even if you only listen to the audio version's about 8 hours long. That's less time than a season of Game of Thrones. It's worth it. Just listen to it. Second question, is it worth the cost? This hard copy was $30. For the value this could provide, and not just for your personal life, but if you're any kind of mental health practitioner, the insights in here are pretty serious. I've spent hundreds of dollars on textbooks that were much less helpful than this, so I would say $30, yeah, it's worth it. Now, if you found this video helpful, I would greatly appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up by hitting the like button. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that you can get these videos in your feed. That is it for Atlas of the Heart, and I'll see you in the next one.